Welcome to another episode of Off the Beaten Path, your new favorite podcast. And today we have Death Therapy. How are you doing, Jason?
Doing good, man. Doing good. Thanks for having me.
Most definitely, man. Thanks for coming on and giving us your time.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a little while, but I'm glad we finally got to do it.
Hey, we're here better late than never.
Yeah, that's
Yes,
right.
sir. So tell us a little bit to anyone that doesn't know about Death Therapy, who y'all are.
Yeah, so Death Therapy is basically me. It's a project that I started in 2015. I sort of quit music for 5 years, started a family, didn't know exactly what I was going to do with music. And then I sat down one day with my bass guitar and was like, man, I want to write some music. So I wrote a bunch of like groovy, heavy stuff that was just bass and drums. And I been going from there now, 6 years and 3 albums later. So yeah.
And is this kind of like what you wanted? Because, with an actual band, you have to deal with schedules and personalities. And is this kind of works perfect for you?
Yeah, totally. Well, I mean, at the point in my life where I'm at, I've got 2 kids and all the dudes from my previous band, now they've all got 2 or 3 kids. And so, if somebody's hearing this and they're like 20 years old, they're like, man, what's he talking about? It's not hard to get a band together. Like, we just hang out at Taco Bell and then we go play music in the parents' basement or something. That's totally what it was for us in like 1999. But now 2021, if I can keep it simple, write some music on my computer, get some friends together who want to like record it with me, that's the way to go.
Yeah, man, that's definitely the easiest way because I mean, even me, I'm in Dead Blow,
Yeah.
and it's like with us, the pandemic was one thing, but two of our members ended up having babies, so it's like schedules and trying to get together to have practice. It's like so much
Yeah.
harder as you get older.
Yo, yeah. I remember seeing Josh post all kinds of crazy videos. Does he play every instrument now?
Yes, pretty much.
I was telling
Man.
Nate he better watch out. He's going to kick every member out and do it by himself.
He
Yeah,
could if he wanted.
he's too talented, man.
Yeah, it's annoying. He literally bought a drum set like
I
at the
know.
beginning of the pandemic, and he was good, because he had played before. But a year later, it's like he's in a band playing drums. He's freaking amazing. It's like, what the hell, man?
I know. I thought about hitting him up to do some studio tracks for me. He's killing it.
Hey, I'm sure he would, man.
Yeah.
And so when it comes to drummers, I know at first you were kind of floating around with different drummers, but
Mhm.
now you actually have a drummer that's permanent.
Well, yeah. So Josh, his name's Josh. He started out with me at the beginning. What's weird, so I'll tell you a little fun story about this. When I started the idea, I told you it was just me on my laptop coming up with some ideas, and I didn't know anything about recording music. So I made some really, really crappy demos with some fake drums. I didn't even know about like MIDI drums. I was going and like hitting stuff on a pad and trying to make fake drums.
Mm.
And it was bad. So I actually played it for several drummers. And I was like, hey, man, I know this is rough, but you want to play drums with this band? And they heard it. And most of them were like, no, this sucks. Like, so Josh was like the original guy who said yes. And he's played with me as often as he's available since the beginning. So really, he's always been the drummer. But at different times, he's been busy with other things and not available. So that's one of the nice parts about being a 2-person thing. Sometimes we play with a keyboard player live too, but keep it flexible.
It's crazy, man. I actually heard about Death Therapy right before the release of Storm Before the Calm.
Yeah.
Because Josh and I have both gotten hired to play this worship gig up in Gainesville.
Yeah.
And we just started talking about old music that we used to listen to. And he's like, yeah. He's like, do you know Jason Wisdom? I'm like, yeah. I was like, I know Wisdom. He's
Yeah,
like,
man.
dude, you have to hear his new project. He took me to his car and let me hear it. And I was like,
Yeah,
I'm
man.
ready to see this. This is awesome.
Yeah, it's evolved a lot since then. When it started out, it was just like, well, I guess I got to do something that's like metal-ish because I don't know how to do anything else. I've only ever just like screamed into the microphone. But the new album that I just put out is like 99% clean vocals, which is
Yeah.
like a huge change. But it's still like big, nasty, fuzzy bass and like, dark stuff. So I think it's kind of a cool sound.
And what was your vision going into Melancholy Machines? Because, like you said, it is a lot of clean vocals and still has a heavy punch to it. But was that the mission, or did it just happen?
Man, I'm just trying to sell out. Really? But nobody's buying. No, honestly, it was, this band has always been more of a project and an experiment for me than anything. I mean, I could sit down and write metalcore stuff in my sleep. It's just how I live and breathe, you know? So what I've always wanted to do is challenge myself a little bit. So on the first album, it was like, I didn't know what I was doing. Storm Before the Calm, the record he was mentioned. So I was like, well, let's just try to make some music that doesn't have a guitar, you know? And that was the challenge. And then the second record, I was like, well, let's try to bring in some like metal stuff like I used to do. There's some like epic songs on that one, but then I was like, let's do some video game music. So I put some like weird video game tunes on there. And then with this one, I was like, all right, I'm 37 years old. Am I ever going to try to just sing instead of scream? You know, let's give it a shot and just see what I can do. Not because of this trying to sell out, but because I think there's a lot of people out there that really would like the style I'm doing, but this metal growling is like a turnoff. I know it's weird, but like when I heard Linkin Park's, what's the song where he starts screaming at the end? I'm trying to remember, you know, where he starts screaming, "Shut up when I'm talking to you."
Yeah.
I remember hearing that on the radio on 99X back in the day when there was rock and roll on the radio. And I remember being like, that's the heaviest thing. He's screaming. What is he doing? But I realized going into Melancholy Machines, there's a difference between screaming and like metal growls. A lot of people are totally down with like, if a part gets real heavy and like the Deftones and he starts screaming or something. But if you just come in like all the time, like Cannibal Corpse, which is like what I do, you know, it just like cuts you off. It's like, all right, well, 90% of the music people won't listen to you.
Right.
So yeah, I was giving it something else a shot to see if I could do it, and I think it turned out pretty cool. Hopefully.
No, yeah, it's amazing. All three, you know, of y'all's albums or your albums is you can tell it's Death Therapy, but they all have their place. You know,
yeah.
You can tell you were in a different place every one you wrote, or just wanted to try something new with everyone.
Totally.
Yeah, man, most definitely. And speaking of the video game, you know, songs like you got the Belmont Family Curse, the Instability of Proto Man, which is I think a Mega Man cover. So, what does video games like? What part of your life does that play in it?
Yeah, I would say subconsciously my biggest musical influence is video games. You know, I played thousands and thousands of hours of like classic Super Nintendo and Nintendo 64 games, all that have the like chiptune sounds and but if you actually, I know some people probably go down a YouTube rabbit hole with this, but you can find like places where people have taken like old video game music and like put orchestra instruments with it. And dude, some of that like Final Fantasy music and stuff is some of the most epic, awesome, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So to me, metal has always been kind of like an extension of that. I didn't get into metal because I was like mad at my parents or anything. I got into metal because I thought the music was just like so cool. And yeah, with Death Therapy, I was just like, well, I'm already doing something different. There's already a lot of keyboards, so why don't we just push it? So during 2020, I did an EP that was just all video game stuff, like you know, original music, but it sounds like video game stuff. So
yeah. I think I heard that. It was like the 8-bit music. I think Daniel Gailey, wasn't he featured on the song?
Yeah, he did a guest guitar. So that was like since I was like, all right, this is COVID and like everybody's just sitting at home and like nobody's busy, I was like hitting up all these guitar players. Death Therapy had never had any guitar on any songs. And I didn't want to like put like power chords. I just figured we'll get a solo. So I got 4 or 5 different people, the guy from Demon Hunter, Daniel Gailey from Fit for King and Phineas. And Thaddeus,
The
you know,
Deus.
back
Yes.
way back.
Way back.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And I skipped one band that he was in between there, but we could talk about that band some other time. But yeah, that was fun. And I didn't have a whole lot of cash floating around, but I was trying to like, hey, what if I pay you to jump on and do these songs, and kind of like, because like I say, I know everybody was just sitting, couldn't go anywhere, couldn't play any shows. A lot of bands broke up during 2020 because they had to go get, real jobs, whatever you want to call it.
Right.
But Daniel's back out there now, man. They're playing shows. They just started a couple days ago.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
awesome. I was
Yeah.
actually going to go see them right before COVID hit. They were going to be in like Virginia. I was
Yeah.
like, hey, man, if I come up, can you get me in? He's like, for sure.
They were one of the last bands, I think, still out there on the road, if I remember, because like even their singer, and I'm not trying to like start a controversy, but you can go back on Twitter and see like he was mad. He was just like, why are they shutting stuff down? Like this is my livelihood. And he kind of like went back and apologized later because he was having a real like, I don't know, almost conspiracy theory attitude about it. But they were like in the middle of a huge tour when it all got shut down. So I'm glad to see them back out there. And, I'm jealous. I wish I could get up and just like roll out to Indianapolis like they just did and have like 600 people crammed in. I mean, like, now it used to be kind of like that though. Back in the day, like just because the scene was so cool. We go up to Cleveland, Georgia, middle of nowhere, and pack 400 people into a little church,
Yeah, man.
So, and that was not like people listening who don't know what this is like, that's not because Becoming the Archetype, the band I was in, was a huge band. Like, it's just because that's how the scene was back then, man. Like, we could drive all the way out to the middle of nowhere in Nebraska and play for 600 people. It was just weird. It was a cool time.
The scene was popping. Like,
well, it was new. It was like, there had been the punk thing in the 80s and the 90s, but like metalcore, it's weird. It's just weird how it all hit. And it was like this like Christian church scene was like, for the first time ever, Christian music was kind of on the cutting edge almost. Because usually Christian music is like 30 years behind everybody else.
right.
And it still is for the most part. Like, but there for like a perfect moment, there was like metalcore was coming in and like the Christian metalcore scene. And then the churches were like, well, what if we just did shows in our basements?
Yeah.
And all the kids were like, yeah, because I can tell my mom it's at a church, and my mom would be like, cool, it's not at a bar, it's safe. So like everybody was at shows, like 12-year-old kids in the pit. Yeah. It was like the coolest, weird. Yeah, it was like a weird time.
I'm glad that all three of us got to experience.
Yeah, for sure.
Experience it. Yeah, that was crazy. And speaking of back in that time, because I know you from becoming, or we know you from Becoming an Archetype. How did you actually get your start in music?
Man, it was totally an accident. So Brent Duckett, who people call him Duck, he played drums in Becoming the Archetype. He sort of started the band, and I was basically just hanging out with him. I was his friend. I didn't play any instruments. I was in choir class in high school, but not for a real reason. I was just trying to get an easy class. I was sitting in his basement. They were playing some Battle of the Bands, and I was like, well, can I come up and do vocals? And they were like, sure. So we did a Battle of the Bands talent show thing at Central Gwinnett High School in the school. And we played a Zayo song, Skin Like Winter, and just scared the crap out of everybody there. And, yeah, so sort of an accident. And then the other singers quit the band. So they were like, well, you can be our singer. And I was like, cool. And then the bass player quit the band. And I was like, well, I guess I'll try to play bass. So I picked up the bass, and I didn't know what I was doing. I was just like, well, tell me which strings to push down, So yeah, that's how it started. That's how I got into it, which is weird because now, 20 something years later, it's become very obvious that was something that was built into me all along, like being creative and coming up with songs and writing things. And Yeah. So
Hell yeah, definitely. And I think one of my favorite songs, if not my favorite, see Becoming an Archetype play live was I don't remember what it was called. I think it was like the Eulogy or something. It was a
e-
really long song.
Elegy. Yeah.
Elegy,
Hmm.
yes. And the reason it was my favorite is because one, y'all wouldn't play it every show,
Right.
and two, y'all would do something. I feel like you would make everyone sit down or something.
Sit
Well,
there
you
and be
were
quiet.
so
Yes.
you were there for like at the beginning of that, because by the time we played that song on tour a couple times, by the time we got like a few real tours, we were like, we can't play the like 4 minute long piano thing in the middle of the song because people are just bored. They like walk out. But there was, man, we've talked about that so many times over the years. Like we're like, well, maybe we should get together and do another Becoming the Archetype album or something, and we'll kick ideas around about that, and um, we'll talk about, well, what should it sound like? And I'm like, man, I don't know. People love the songs that I think are the weirdest and lamest songs. Like 4 minutes of just Seth going like boom, boom, boom on the keyboard. I think it was just a moment. I think if we did that now, people would be like, man, this is boring as crap. But I think it was like a thing. It was like Devil Wears Prada was one, and Under Oath were around sort of the same time as BTA, but like they only used a keyboard for like pads and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? They didn't play like piano stuff. So I think there were a bunch of kids hanging out that saw our shows, and they were like, they took piano lessons when they were growing up or something. Like their parents made them take piano lessons, or they were going to school, for something, and for music, and they were like, dude, this band's got piano.
Right.
So that's so funny that you picked that song. Seth will be happy about that. That's like the song. Like, so Seth was not, his stage name was Count Seth. He wasn't in the band originally. Like right when we got signed, Jacob left the band. You remember Jacob?
Jacob.
I just lost his last name for some reason. I'll remember it later, but Jacob was in the scene back then and played all the stuff with us. But he left the band like right when we got signed, and Seth joined, and it was because Seth wrote that song Elegy that we let him into the band.
So yeah, he's gonna be very excited.
Yeah, we were at college together, and he played me some riffs from that song. I was like, all right, well, maybe you want to play in our band. So, and he was the keyboard player. So,
yeah, man. Yeah, and like you said, it was
Jacob Franklin.
Jacob Franklin.
I don't know.
Doesn't ring a bell.
He had a band in Atlanta a few years ago called Irreversible also. Anyway, he's a cool guy. He was in our band. So shout out to Jacob.
Shout out to Jacob Franklin.
Yeah.
Yes, sir. And so with Death Therapy, to move forward, what's your creative process like when it comes to actually write a song?
Yeah. To me, you just gotta write as much as you can and not be afraid to throw it away. Like if I write 100 riffs, I might keep 10, So I feel like that sort of set me free with being creative, was when I realized everything didn't have to be perfect when I'm coming up with the ideas. Man, we used to argue so much. Going back to, I appreciate that you're bringing it back to Death Therapy, because we don't need to talk only about some old man band, but Becoming the Archetype. But I can remember being 18 years old and being in Sean Cunningham's parents' garage, and we were writing that first album for Becoming the Archetype. And man, we would cuss each other out, and like everybody would quit the band every other day because it was just like, man, that riff sucks, man. You suck. Why are you writing riffs that just suck? And like we would just hate on each other for these riffs. And now I'm thinking like, we probably could have just worked on it and made it cool, but at the time we had all these like perfection mentality of like, no, everything we write has to be, it was a stupid thing. And I think people get hung up on that when they're trying to create something like, if they're writing a book or something different than music. Like sometimes you just got to sit down and just write.
Yeah. I was watching the Stephen King interview, and it was a Q&A, and someone asked him like, "Hey, I want to write my first book. What should I do? Blah blah blah." He said, "Start it."
Right.
He's like,
Yeah.
"That's the only answer
Yeah,
I
just
have
pick
for
it
you.
up.
Just start it." Yep.
Yeah. See, with a Death Therapy record for this newest one, Melancholy Machines, I had written the first 2 records for Death Therapy all by myself, just me on my laptop. And when I showed up in the studio with the producer, I was like, "This is the way the song goes," and we just recorded it. But then on the second record, I met Nate Washburn, who has got a great name, Nate. But he's in a band called My Epic, and he's a really, really good producer. He's worked on a lot of stuff in Atlanta with Matt Goldman, worked on some like Under Oath and Norma Jean's stuff at Glow in the Dark Studios. But he's starting to do a lot more of his own stuff. Actually, Phineas, I think, did their new album Drums with him. Gotcha. So, and their new single is awesome. I just heard it the other day. But yeah, so I met Nate working on the second record. Nate sort of like helped me with some of the keyboards and stuff. The third record, I went to Nate and I was like, "Hey man, what if we just sort of like write this record organically? What if I just like send you ideas and we get together and we just mess around with stuff?" And so that's what we did for Melancholy Machines. And I would come up with some really bad riffs and he would make them better, or then he would give me some ideas and I would try to make them better. And I feel like that's the ideal situation for a band, not what we used to do, like I was describing, where we would just like hate on each other. But yeah, it was fun to like just create stuff organically back and forth with somebody. And like, you know, like the very first riff on the new Death Therapy record on Melancholy Machines is a riff that's just like, it's just like when I was 20 years old, I would have thrown that riff in the garbage can. And I would have been like, "Man, that's some like rock and roll. That's boring. That's, you know, that's radio." But then now I'm older. I'm like, but if it feels good, then just let it be. Let it feel good, you know?
Exactly. So. Yeah.
And when you sit down to write, do you do it from pure silence and just whatever comes out, or do you put music on to kind of set the vibe?
It depends on how many ideas I've got that are just, I don't know how anybody else is, but I've got like my cell phone with all kinds of like little voice memos and little notes in there of song riff ideas. I'm the annoying guy walking around in the grocery store doing like, you know, like I'm that guy. And my wife is like, "Shut up," because I have a 9-year-old son who's starting to do that now. And what's crazy is like, until you have kids, you don't realize that kids pick up that stuff just naturally. Like I have really bad allergies in the spring. This is so disgusting to tell you that, but I have really bad allergies. So like I spit a lot, like, cause I don't know, I'm a man. I don't want to blow my nose with a hanky all the time. Like I just like spit loogies. My son, who's 9 years old, will just like roll the window down sometimes in the car and just be like, he's not spitting anything, but he just feels like he has to, like he's just, so he sees me do it. So we're walking around in the store or something and I'm making, you know, breakdown noises or something, rhythms, and he starts doing it. And my wife's like, "Oh my God, why?" You know, but to me, so you said, a lot of times I'll just sit with the ideas that I have and I'll go through. But other times if I've got like super bad writer's block, this is going to piss some people off that I say this. My wife told me I should never tell anybody this. I'll straight up like rip a song. I'll just like find a band. I'll be like, "Man, I love this song." And I'll take it and I'll literally put the MP3 on my computer and then I'll start recording and I'll go part by part and I'll just basically like make my own version of what they did. Now here's the thing. My goal is always just to use that to get me started. And then I'll start taking stuff apart, changing it, fixing the rhythm, changing the chords, make it my own. Right. But like sometimes I feel like that can get you going. I'll sometimes just take a band's song lyrics and I'll be like, "All right, I'll put them on a Word document on the left side, and then I'll just like make my version on the right side."
Hey man.
But by the time it's over, it's like it's my own thing.
Yeah.
So. And see, I don't think anything's wrong with that. I was watching a Hunter S. Thompson documentary a few weeks ago, and
Yeah.
I want to say in the documentary they were talking about how in the beginning, so he could learn how to write, he would sit down and write word for word like Mark Twain books,
Totally.
like just to learn how it feels to write a great masterpiece.
Well,
And
that's what they say, that, you know, mimicking and like copying is what human beings do. You know what I mean? It's just part of the way we are. And so
yeah,
I feel like a lot of people, especially in the metal and the hardcore scene and stuff, like they get really like, oh, I gotta be the most original thing that's ever happened, or it's not cool. So there'll be some guy like, you know, doing crazy noise. You've seen the video on YouTube of the guy with like the snare drum on the table, and he's like putting the microphone in the snare drum, like making noises, and there's people watching it, and he's like, what? He's like bashing his head into the table. And I'm like, this video has 10 million views. This guy's more successful at music than I'll ever be. But he's just bashing his head to a snare drum. So it's like, does anyone actually enjoy this? So I think if we go back and we find the music that truly moves people and people really enjoy, that's long lasting, not just like, you know, whatever's cool at the time, then I think we can mimic that. I mean, I think that's what we're supposed to do. I hated being in school, but I think that's why we were supposed to read books in school, which I didn't. I always skipped them.
Neither. Yeah.
But now that I'm older, like it's crazy. I substitute teach in Gwinnett County, and I'll go sit in sometimes in an English class, and the assignment will be to like read a poem. And I'll read the poem with the class, and I'm like, oh man, this is deep. Like, what? This poem's awesome. And I'm like, this is so cool. And then I look out at the class, and they're all just like on their iPhones, and they couldn't care less. But I think the point, you know, in an ideal world, we just are supposed to like read that stuff, write that stuff, mimic that stuff, and then we learn how to do it ourselves. Like, you know, as a bass player, like I watched the guy from Dream Theater, John Mayung, like for years on the DVD, and I was just like, oh man, I want to be like him, you know. So
Yeah, and I think we've all had that. And I mean, the saying, there's nothing new under the sun, you know, so it's like we're going to repeat history, and we're going to gravitate towards what we like. And if we're in that profession or whatever, then yeah, we might sound like them, might look like them, but as long as it's not a split image and you
right.
take it into your own lane, then yeah, I don't see nothing wrong with it at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, people probably will get offended.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think some people have a conception that artists are like, just like I don't know, what do you would think, like a monk that like meditates on top of a mountain, and these ideas just come into their head magically. And I think a lot of our favorite musicians, at least in my experience, are just people who like, I don't know who their influences are, so I can't spot them as easily as other people. You know what I mean? But they're still looking up to whoever it is. So I think sometimes one of the things that makes the most unique and interesting music is if you've got like tons of different influences. You know, it's not that you don't have influences, it's that you don't have like a one mono sound that you're going for. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
I know when I first started doing rap, probably about like 12 years ago, and Bobby was recording me, and he was like, you gotta stop trying to sound like Lil Wayne on every song. But that's pretty much at that time was all I listened to. So of course, you know, I'm gonna pick up on it, and even if I try not to do it, I'm still gonna end up doing it. But you know, you gotta broaden your horizons, and yeah, like you said, pull influences from different artists instead of just that monolithic one.
Yeah, because if you can get really good at that style, but then you can bring in a couple other styles and like mix them together on the canvas, then all of a sudden you've got something that's unique that you can share. And I think that's something that I've learned as I've gotten older and more mature, is like, there's times when I think like, man, who cares about the music I make? Like, I'm wasting my time, you know, like there's millions of artists, like, why should I do? But then I realize there are some people who specifically want the little bit of mixed flavors that I can give them that they don't get from somebody else. So
right. Yeah, and I love me some Death Therapy, man, so keep doing what you're doing. Most definitely.
And what have you been listening to recently that's bringing out the more industrial, like 90s vibe.
We listened to. Have you ever heard of the band? They're from the UK. They're called Idols. Have you heard of them?
Sounds familiar.
Not Idols like Golden Idols, but like Idols, IDLES. Idols.
I think I have.
No,
they're super cool. You should check them out. It's almost like if Conor McGregor had like a weird indie punk band, like, but because the guy's got like a super thick Cockney accent, and he almost just like, it's almost like he's just talking over top of these crazy rock riffs and stuff. We listened to a lot of that when we were working on the Melancholy Machines record. Listened to 9 Inch Nails, that's going back to like when I was in high school, which we could talk about that some, but I think that there's a lot of who you are as a musician gets built when you're like 17, 18 years old. So I feel kind of corny sometimes when I look back at that, because people make fun of like Limp Bizkit and stuff, but I'm like, that's what I was into.
Yep.
You know,
yeah.
I heard that stuff and I was like, this is the heaviest stuff. Korn, Limp Bizkit. I was like, Linkin Park, man, this is so cool. So 9 Inch Nails was cool at the time. Rage Against the Machine was cool at the time, that I was super into when I was in high school. So a lot of that came back out. Yeah, I'm trying to think back to what else we were listening to, but I remember us listening to a lot of that band Idols, and they were a really big influence. So
I feel like I've heard of them. I'm not 100% sure, but I feel like I have.
They've come over here and played Music Midtown a few times, and there's a band called Royal Blood, which is another band that's similar to Death Therapy. It's a bass player and a drummer, so they're sort of like a White Stripes with bass, you know, which is kind of what Death Therapy does. We listen to a lot of them. Their new stuff is pretty cool. Yeah, I would say those are probably the biggest ones. Arctic Monkeys.
Yes. That's when I can jump on board.
Okay, all right. Everybody knows Arctic Monkeys, which is so funny because to me, I still think of Arctic Monkeys as like an indie band, you know. But then I go look them up online, and they have 1 or 2 songs that actually on YouTube have more than 1 billion plays, and I was like, what? So like Arctic Monkeys, Black Keys, those are the 2, I guess, the ones everybody's heard of.
Right.
But you should definitely check out Idols, and you should definitely check out Royal Blood.
Yeah, Royal Blood's really good.
Yeah.
One thing I was doing today is going down a rabbit hole of how many rock metal duos are like Death Therapy, where it's just bass, drums, and the bassist does vocals.
Yeah.
Very few.
Yeah, I think it's picking up some steam. I think more people so I can remember in 2014 when I bought my Pog pedal, the one that does the octave sounds, they were like $60-$70. And now if you go look them up on Sweetwater or Guitar Center or whatever, they're like $160. They've gone. So I think more and more guitar players have learned, hey, I don't need a bass player. I can just do this. So like 68, Josh Scoggin, who was Norma Jean guy in the Chariot. Now he does the opposite of Death Therapy, right? He does the guitar with the bass sound underneath. But yeah, I still think that there's like there's a thing that stands in the way of a lot of bass players doing it on their own, and I think it's that we get told as bass players sometimes, like, you just need to stay in the back and make everybody else sound good, which is totally fits for most music, right? I play at church, and my job is to basically not be noticed. You know, if I play all the right notes, then nobody will notice, but the band will sound good. But to be the main guy, you got to play some riffs. You got to you can't just be plucking like one string, one note for a whole song. It'll bore everybody to death. So I think that's one of the things that maybe I'll be in the minority for a while on that, but I would like to encourage more bass players to give it a shot, pick it up. Like, I actually think it's cooler, in my opinion, than doing the other thing. Like the White Stripes thing is cool, right? Like Seven Nation Army, the song that everybody knows, there's no bass on that song.
Right.
It's just guitar, but it's pitched down an octave. But you can only do the pitch. You can only pitch a guitar down for like single note stuff. When you start playing chords, it sounds like crap when you pitch it down to the bass. But with bass, if you pitch it up, you can do chords, and it kind of sounds cool. So I don't know. I like it.
Yeah, and my dad, he was confused by both of y'all. I remember like back when I was a teenager, and he was like, I was like, yeah, there's listening to the White Stripes, and I was like, yeah, there's that's a guitar, and he was like, how's that a guitar? That makes no sense. And I told him about the octave pedal and shit.
Right.
And then he came and saw y'all. We played y'all's album release, and he was like,
Yeah, I remember that. I remember when he was there.
yeah, he was like, Nate, where's the guitar at? I was like, he's playing the bass, but he's running it through an octave pedal. He's like, he was way over his head, like, what? How does that work?
Yeah.
But yeah, man,
he was nice though. He seemed like he enjoyed it.
Oh yeah, he loved it. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And yeah, it was a fun show.
Yeah, that was fun, man. I've been actually trying to get some bands to come back through and do some like little shows like that. Around, just get some little intimate shows going.
Right, I love those, man.
Yeah,
those are some of the funnest in my opinion.
Yeah, totally. Playing that little purgatory room in Masquerade was a lot of fun.
Man, we only got to play there one time, but it was packed out because it's such a small room, and Wage War was playing, so it was like, yeah, that was a fun show as well.
I miss that old Masquerade building, man. The new venue doesn't do it justice.
Yeah, I mean, it's the one upside of the new Masquerade is that you can go outside in between shows, and like you have somewhere to go.
You have space, yeah.
The old Masquerade, you had that like little spot next to the stairs where everybody would go and smoke, and like it was the only place to go because they wouldn't let you no re-entry.
Right.
So that's my only thing I like about Kenny's Alley, the new one down there, is that you can get out and you can walk around for a minute and then you can go back in the venue.
Exactly.
But yeah, nothing will ever top. I mean, I'm talking like no venue. It's weird because I'm from here, but like I don't think there's any venue that will top that crazy elevator taking your gear up to the top floor in the Masquerade, and like being up in the top floor for a show, and I'm not even talking about like when we're playing, but like being up there and you could just feel the floor going like this when the band is, man. Now, I mean, obviously, I think it was last year it actually collapsed while they were working on it.
Oh wow!
It was in the news. They were doing some work around the building and like it just collapsed. Wow! And I was like, man, of all the times it could have collapsed when I was up there.
Yeah, I was waiting for it at any moment, man, because like you said, like you could literally feel it shaking.
Oh yeah, man. Yeah. I saw some cool shows there though. I saw some great bands. So I'm grateful. I'm grateful. Like we said, grateful that I got to be part of that old, like the little scene, the underground scene that happened in people's houses and basements. Right. It's also cool that I got to experience that old Masquerade scene in Atlanta. Because they did every kind of show there. There were hip hop shows upstairs that were packed out. I think I saw Killer Mike there one time before Run the Jewels, like when he was just doing some like solo stuff, and it was just cool that I thought of it as like a metal venue, but to the city of Atlanta, it was just like everything happened there. So.
And I almost want to say it kind of was like a metal venue, even though everything happened. But it's like when I would go to rap shows, like I'd go to see Tech Nine or I'd go to see other rappers, it was almost kind of like the same thing. Like you didn't get too much like hardcore rap or anything. It was that underground kind of like the juggalos.
I was about to say, yeah, you get the ICP crowd in there, yeah.
Right. Yeah. So it's like these dudes like rap, but they also might like metal, like
right.
Yeah. So I miss those shows, but I'm so glad that we all got to experience that, man.
Yeah, Tech Nine plays a bunch of metal festivals and stuff even now. Like I've seen him on the list. He plays a bunch of like these big metal shows. I'm like, that's awesome. Him and Snoop will like headline a stage after like Gojira or something. It's so weird to see. Man. It's so weird to see like, it'll be like Megadeth one night and then the next night the headliner is like Snoop Dogg or something. But
right.
I think that's actually goes to something we were talking about before you recording, which is like, I do feel like the people who are our age appreciate a little bit more of a mixture. Like if I were to go to a festival that was all day long, I actually wouldn't want it to be just like all metal bands. I would be so bored by the end of the day. It would be nice to be able to go see like 2 or 3 metal bands, and then some other sounds, some rock bands, some hip hop groups, something else. Which is kind of what Cornerstone Festival was like in Illinois back in the 2000s. You could go see Under Oath in a packed out like sweaty tent with like 4,000 people, and then you could go around the corner and there'd be like hippies playing like with incense, playing like little hand drums and stuff. So.
Right.
Yeah, and that was a special time too. I made it to, I want to say 07.
Yeah.
I just went the 1 year, but just that experience was remarkable.
Yeah, it was cool because I don't know that it, like, this is getting a little bit into like weird religious conversation, but like it was like all of this negative stuff that a lot of people have now sort of recognized as negative, like the legalistic Christian upbringing and things that they may have had. It also produced in this weird way, like this, like it's almost like when you have a balloon and it's full and you like push down on one side, it gets bigger on the other side. It's almost like all of this other energy created this, like, for just a moment in time, there was this cool like punk Christian, like hardcore, which we already talked about, that was like, I've never seen anything like it. So like I know people that go to like, they'll travel to Germany to go to the Wacken Metal Festival, which is like the biggest metal festival that exists. But I don't feel like those people actually know each other, and I don't feel like they connect in the same way. I could talk to people, I'm like, oh yeah, you remember Cornerstone 05? And they're like, oh yeah, man. Like it was like a shared culture where we all felt like we were brothers and sisters, even though there were like 50,000 people there. So
yeah, real sense of community.
Yeah. Right. And like I say, I mean, I totally get that there was a lot of baggage that came along with some of that culture. I can remember being at Cornerstone one year, and Zao showed up, and they were like having to hide behind the tent so they could smoke, because like the church kids would be like, oh, they're not even Christians, they're smoking. It's like, come on. So a lot of that crap had to die off. And now you got bands like Under Oath who they actively talk about how that sucked for them at the time. But I don't know, they seem like they benefited a lot from it.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's like, it was, because I can speak from experience. Becoming the Archetype never got humongous, but what little bit of like a wave that we were able to ride was totally because of that. If we had just started out playing shows in bars and stuff, then that's hard. It's still hard. You know what I mean? Which is why I think so many people are discouraged with the music scene right now. It's like, with everything being oversaturated, even if you can get a show, it's just hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and back then I feel like it was a catch-22, kind of like what you mentioned, because being in a Christian band, that did give you more opportunities and did elevate you, but also it was like you were held to such a higher standard than everyone else was. It was like, the person going to church and then actually a person being the pastor. Like the pastor's gonna get everything he does is looked under a microscope,
Totally. And I think that, it's produced all this weird stuff, like where, there's still bands that are around like Devil Wears Prada and Under Oath and stuff who, a lot of people are like, oh man, I remember them when they were Christian. I mean, there was I can remember, this is weird that I remember this one particular magazine back when people used to read magazines, but there was like an alternative press magazine, an alt press, that had like Corey from Norma Jean and Tim from As I Lay Dying and Spencer from Under Oath and Ryan from Demon Hunter. And it was like, the cover was like Christian metal ? Or something, and there was just a time, it was just a thing that happened. And what I wish could happen again is not necessarily that, but I wish that there was some underground movement to subsidize the arts the way that the church did. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because that's what made it cool, was that all of a sudden this network all around the country in the United States of churches started putting some money into their youth programs or whatever you want to call it. And you got all this like amazing art that came out of it. And I feel like, I mean, obviously, as a Christian person myself, I would love it if churches would do that again. But I just feel like as a country, America should do that. Like, I feel like some other countries do. Like, I know some people who are artists in Canada, and they actually can get money from the government to create music. And I feel, I don't know. I just feel like if you don't subsidize the arts, if you don't encourage the arts in your community or in your country, then it's going to die out, or people are going to, I don't know. So I feel like what we're experiencing right now is a lot of people are just sort of like beat down, and like everything that comes out. I mean, and I'm guilty of this too. It's like everything that comes out is just depressing. Like all the songs are about depression. Like, you know what I mean? There's no, like, I don't know. There's no excitement in the arts right now, it seems like. I mean, there is excitement. I just mean, like, everybody seems like they're really sad and depressed about something.
You know, that is so true, man. Like, even in hip hop, like, it used to not be cool to be depressed, but now
No, I mean,
like,
Biz Markie just died yesterday, right? And I mean, he became famous just making people laugh.
exactly,
in hip hop. So
yeah, it's crazy. And speaking of depression, so like the theme that I got from Melancholy Machines is, you know, it speaks on death. It speaks about hiding in the dark and running from your problems, etc. So when you first thought about, okay, I'm gonna write another album, did you go in the mindset like, hey, I have been fighting demons, my friends have been fighting demons, let me write this album? Or did it just kind of happen, you're 2 or 3 songs in, and you're like, well, shoot, might as well keep going?
Well, it's a little bit of both. I sort of made the commitment when I started Death Therapy that I wasn't going to overanalyze the lyrics, that I was just going to focus on letting it be stream of consciousness, just like whatever comes out of me comes out, and I'm not going to polish it up. But now that it was the third album, I kind of had a little bit more of an idea of what I wanted it to be. And I also have realized now that, COVID was happening when I was writing the record, right? So everybody was separated, and I can't physically go be with people at shows, which is, I'm a weird guy. This is a little bit of a detour, but like, I love music, but I'm not like a jam band kind of guy. Like, I don't just get together with my buddies and just like jam. Like, hey, let's just pick a key and we'll just hang out and just play. My daughter just walked in the room. Hey, baby, I'm on a phone call. Okay, can you go back out? But I wish I was that guy, but I'm more like, I like to sit down in my room by myself and like record some music, or get together in the studio with some people. I guess I like recording more than I like jamming. I like playing shows too, because I like the energy. But I guess what I'm getting at is, my favorite thing about shows is getting to hang out with people. Right? It's not, let me get up on stage and show off my abilities. Like, first of all, I don't think I've got much to show off. But second of all, like, that's just not my thing. Like, I feel like the best shows I've ever had, my best show memories have always been something about somebody I got to talk to, or somebody I got to hang out with, or somebody we went to Waffle House after the show. And a lot of times I just go unconscious during the concert. I don't even know what's happening. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I guess that was a long way of saying, as I was writing the lyrics for the album, it was a little bit more like, well, I can't be with people physically. Is there a way I can sort of give a message that will connect with them psychologically, so that when they hear it, it's like I'm there with them and we can relate on this issue. So none of it is like fake. It's all stuff that I struggle with, but some of it was definitely written to sort of send a message to other folks, that I know what you're going through and you're not alone, which is what the chorus of the first song says, you are not alone.
And I like how, you know, even wrap it up with
my daughter's poking her head in again.
But I like how you even wrap it up, you know, basically saying like, hey, I've taken you through all of this. Now, if you can make it through the storm, you're gonna
Right.
uh, transform to a higher form. So I like how we went through the storm with you, but then
Right.
at the end you're like, hey, look, it's rough
That's
sometimes.
that ending. I man, that really encourages me that you saw it that way, because a lot of people, now they don't listen to the whole album. They just listen to the singles. But like, that's totally my goal was, if you make it all the way through the album, when you get to the very end of the last song, it's literally the happiest sounding guitar part or bass part I've ever written. It sounds like it's major key. Actually, the very, very end of the song, you have to go back and check this out. The song's called Melancholy Machines for anybody who doesn't know. But the very end of the song, as it's fading out, turn the sound up a little bit and you'll hear it actually pitch bends up to a major key. There's like it's called a Picardy third in music theory, but it bends up to a major to end. And it's supposed to be like, yeah, we've gone through all of this. It's dark, it's difficult, but there's hope. So
there's hope. Yeah,
but
man,
but not in like a, I don't know, just to me it's like there's so much like shallow if you go to the beach or something, like it's the shallow part where you can see through clearly, but the deep stuff sometimes it's not as clear. And I've learned, I feel like as an artist, that sometimes I can give a more powerful message if it's not quite as obvious, so it encourages me to hear that you picked up on the way that ended, as it was meant to lift somebody up,
Right. Most definitely.
I listened to it first because it's a single that you did the music video for.
Right.
And I was like, whoa, this is going to be a different album.
Yeah.
But then it kicked in with the first song. I was like, nope, this Death Therapy is in your face. It's growling. But I did like the arc, how it ended on something that was, I guess, lyrically a lot different from the rest of the album, but also musically different as well.
Yeah, and the very first single that we put out for the record was the one that's got the crazy saxophone part in it and stuff. It's a song called Tension, and it's got this bump on the saxophone. And I just remember when we wrote that song thinking, man, nobody's gonna like this song. This song is just too weird. And then we sent it to the record label, and they were like, "That's the best song. You got to put that one out. You got to put that one out first." And I was like, I don't know about that, but people seem to dig it though.
Yeah, the whole album's good, but yeah, Tension, that is a good one. And speaking of like being able to, get the message clearly or maybe not as clear, with Bullet Holes, is that on like the political climate of the country, or did I completely miss the message?
It is I specifically wrote that one to try to be very broadly speaking about any number of issues. I mean, obviously there's gun violence issues, there's school shootings issues, there's all types of issues, right? And my biggest frustration, I don't know if people share this, but I just feel like when I look at politicians and I look at the news and people arguing, nobody actually wants to get anything done. They just all want to say something that's sort of like putting a Band-Aid on it. And then 20 years later, we look back and nothing's changed. And like, so that was sort of my thing in that song, was I wanted to say like, I mean, like I say, there's been people I've seen write reviews of the album and they're like, Jason, it's so brave of Jason to take on gun violence in this song. And I'm like, I mean, the song is called Bullet Holes, and the tagline is all you've got is Band-Aids for these bullet holes, but it's meant to be more metaphorical also. Right. Just like whatever the issue is, why are you trying to put Band-Aids when there's a bullet hole? Why are you trying to like, just say something, whether it's, I could list any issue you can think of in politics. And it just, if you watch long enough, you start to feel like, man, they don't actually want to do anything. They just want to talk. They just want to talk and put a Band-Aid on it and then get everybody to clap for them.
Right.
So.
And I like how you kept it broad. You didn't pinpoint on any particular issue, because I've said plenty of times on the podcast is, I love art because I can look at it and see one thing, Bobby looks at it and see something completely different. So with Bullet Holes, it really gives you the opportunity to apply it to whatever you think it's for.
Totally. And that's the way, I think that's how it should be with art, you know.
Most definitely.
Which is one reason that, like I said a minute ago, I want to try to be able to tackle deep things that may not be quite as clear. But, you know, there's some people who get upset about that. You know, they're going to interpret it in a negative way, I guess, but whatever.
And where were you sitting mentally when you wrote Familiar Shadows and The Silence of God?
All right, so The Silence of God is a cover song. I didn't write the lyrics for that one.
Okay.
It's actually, it is a cover song of a guy whose name is Andrew Peterson, and he's just like a folk singer-songwriter, Christian singer-songwriter guy. Just you can find him online. It's almost like he almost sounds a little bit like James Taylor. Like, it's just got like a really natural kind of voice. But I like a lot of his stuff. I've actually read, he has a fantasy book series that he wrote that's really good. And I wanted to do that song. So we just made it like an epic, dark kind of version. But the reason I'm spending time telling you about that one is because I told him, I actually got to meet him at a concert. He came and did like a special little thing in somebody's backyard, which was crazy. It was like, just like a little intimate thing. It was like $60 for a ticket, which was crazy. But then it was like, there's only going to be 100 people. So that was really cool. I was like, all right, I'll pay $60, which I think that could be something that maybe 21 Pilots is doing that on their new tour, where they're playing like arenas, but then they're also playing these little clubs. I feel like some big artists could start doing some, like, I don't know. I feel like, yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know Mike Posner, he did the same kind of thing, you know, just playing in like little fields,
totally
just setting up and out.
But I got to meet him, and I told him, I said, I've been going to church my whole life, and I went to Bible school, and I got 2 master's degrees from seminaries, and I said, but the thing that helped me the most in my faith was when I heard this song, The Silence of God. And it clicked for me. The lyrics of the song basically are explaining, like, God comes to earth in the form of Jesus, and then all of his friends abandon him, and he's alone in the Garden of Gethsemane crying, and they're all asleep and they don't care. And then he goes to the cross and they all leave him alone. You know what I mean? And it was literally, that's just the message. It's just like, he gets it. It doesn't say like, oh, and he'll make it all better, you know, because that, to me, that's something I don't want to say. You know, I don't want people to come with like a prosperity religion thing where it's just like, oh yeah, well, if you become a Christian, then you're just going to be rich and everything's going to be awesome. And I don't believe any of that. But if I can have the message that God knows what it's like to be alone. So that kind of goes back to the song Familiar Shadows you're asking about too. So yeah, I mean, that meant a lot to me, and that's why I wanted to include it on the album, and that's why I wanted to give that message to people. And there's a guest vocalist on that song who's a singer from a band called Fireflight, and part of the reason I wanted her to sing that part was because, and this is going to sound really corny, but like, I don't feel like a lot of dudes sound particularly different than each other a lot of times when they're singing on songs.
True.
So like, I mean, everything's auto-tuned now, and everybody's kind of trying to sound like they sound. I mean, so I was like, I got to get somebody on here that's voice, when it hits, it will really make people like stop for a minute. And so it's like, well, let me ask her to do it. And it totally does. It's like a shift in the song when she comes in. So anyway, but you know, speaking of that, now this is a little bit less serious, but I think yesterday, Fit for a King and August Burns Red released their collab thing where they're like doing karaoke on each other's songs, basically.
Oh,
they switched vocalists. Did you see that?
No. I gotta check it out
though.
I think that's a Daniel Gailey idea, because Daniel Gailey loves karaoke. I don't know if you knew that about him,
No.
but they call it a mashup, but it's basically just Jake from August Burns Red singing on Fit for a King songs, screaming, and then Ryan doing the same on August Burns Red songs.
That's awesome.
I wish we'd have thought about that. Like, I wish I'd have thought of heavy metal karaoke.
Right. And speaking of that, that's something I want to ask is, you said Daniel Gailey likes karaoke. What's something that people watching or people that actually, know you or know Death Therapy might not know that you like to do?
Well, I'm pretty open. So I've kind of told most people that I like to play golf.
Oh.
Which, I mean, golf is hitting things with a metal stick. So I think that's pretty metal. I used to play golf a lot. I wrote a children's book recently. I actually just launched a Kickstarter for that yesterday. So I like to write stuff. I like to play golf. What else do I like to do? Matt Goldman, who's a producer in Atlanta that a lot of people know, he did a lot of great records, Under Oath and The Chariot. He and I play a lot of board games together.
Oh,
so
nice.
we like to play and I'm not talking like playing like Monopoly. I'm talking like board more like nerdy board games, whatever
Like
you
some
want to call
strategy
it.
and
Some strategy board games, yeah.
Heck yeah, man.
So yeah, man.
Is Matt back? Because I thought he went to Tennessee for a little bit.
Well, so he's been working out of a place in Tennessee, but actually they've been back in Atlanta for a little while, and actually he may be moving somewhere else. So I don't want to speak out of school about that kind of stuff.
For sure.
But yeah, they reopened the old school glow in the dark studio in Little 5 Points, which is where I did that's how that ties in with this. I did the new Death Therapy record there. So
nice.
Yep. Get that little 5 Points energy in Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
Heck yeah, man, most definitely. And
our mom used to always tell us, you can go there before the show, but after it's dark, no.
Yeah,
and one of the first times I did, I was like, it's a different vibe over here. It's really
I understand.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, man. And this is just a random statement because when I heard it, it's the first thing that came to mind is if I were an MMA fighter or a boxer, my walkout music would definitely be Flammable Animals.
Yeah, there you go.
It would have to be, man, because I don't know, just it gets you pumped.
I'm glad. Yeah, I wanted that song to be a single. I thought it was one of the best songs on the record. So I'm glad to hear that.
Most definitely.
I like that riff. The bow, bow, bow.
Yo.
Bow, bow, bow.
Yo.
What's funny about that is that song was originally the main riff was I can't even remember how it goes now, but we recorded a totally different riff. And then like 2 weeks before we finished the record, we just simplified it. We just like totally redid it. We actually brought the drummer back and he re-recorded drums to just do the bum, 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 which was like part of the original riff, if that makes sense. So like I guess that goes all the way back to one of your earlier questions about like, how do you write stuff? It's just like, just see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. I like it.
Totally.
I like that theme. I've heard from a lot of like famous musicians too. Bootsy Collins was talking about how when he met James Brown, he was a very busy bass player and kind of all over the place. And James was like, no, take that out, simplify it, make it groovy. And he'd play like riffs with 2 or 3 notes sometimes, and it's just the feel it had was so different from the very busy stuff.
Totally. There's a new drum library that I saw that came out from one of James Brown's drummers that they just have been advertising to me, and it looks really cool. And people were just talking about how he was so groovy. Like he's not famous. I can't even remember what his name is, but like James Brown's band was like, man, there's all kinds of cool documentary stuff about that, where they like some of them didn't get paid. Like they got kicked out of the band. You know what I mean? It's kind of like the guy who played drums in the Beatles or whatever before Ringo Starr. It's like, they just got forgotten.
Right.
So anyway.
That's kind of how, what's his name? Who was the dude that played in Metallica and then ended up playing in, I think, Megadeth?
Oh, yeah. Dave Mustaine.
Yeah, so it's the same kind of thing with him, like he gets kicked out randomly it
Right.
ruins his life. He goes and starts another band. And it's like, I'm gonna be much bigger than y'all. Never was much bigger than them. Like,
Right. Yeah. I
yeah,
mean,
man.
and that's a good story. I guess what I'm saying is like I've seen documentaries talking about James Brown's band. Elvis's band was kind of the same way, where like they would have people who were the best. They would come in and create all these grooves and stuff, but because it was like the 50s and 60s and stuff, those people would just get like tossed to the curb, and then they didn't get any money, and you know what I mean. So now there's these classic songs that everybody knows, and they've been sampled for hip hop beats and stuff, like James Brown drum beats and stuff. And I can't remember exactly which drummer it was, but there was one drummer, I swear I saw a documentary where they were talking about how he had even became homeless after playing with James Brown, and going back is like he pioneered that sound. So
Right.
the music industry is weird, man. Like there's only been this little tiny window of time where people were just making tons of money, and I think we took that for granted. And now I feel like we're getting back to a time where if you want to make music, you got to find your friends who support you, and you got to create stuff that they like, and you know what I mean? Which is kind of how that's how it used to be. You know what I mean? Not to go back to like the Middle Ages, but like, you know what I mean? If you were a guy who wanted to play an instrument back then, it's not like you could release a CD. You had to find people who wanted to sit down in the theater and listen to you play. So
Right.
that's what I'm having to learn, man. I'm 37 years old now, and when I released my first album with with Becoming the Archetype, it was 2004 or 2005. Man, 2005, we put out that record. I think it sold 40,000 copies. And that was not even much back then. Whereas now, I don't even know what the new Death Therapy record has sold, because nobody cares. Like, it's like the music industry has changed so much. You know what I mean? It may be
crazy.
It may be that it sold 400 copies first. I don't know. Like, literally nobody cares. And I guess what I'm having to learn, so I don't know if this would encourage anybody who hears this, is like, I could be all grumpy about that and be really like, oh, music industry sucks. But like I just said, I wrote a children's book. I wrote a devotional book. I did an EP of video game music, the new Death Therapy record. I've actually got 2 or 3 other albums right now I'm working on. And for me, it's actually kind of encouraging, because I see these people's names. Like, I'm not going to advertise their names, but I got a stack of vinyls I got to mail out to people. I'm starting to recognize these names. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm like, oh yeah, I know that guy. And it's humbling to know that there's like, even if it's just 400 or 500 people, they kind of want to buy it if I put it out. And that's really encouraging. So yeah, I can get old and I can still make some stuff for some people that they like, I guess.
Hell yeah. And
I think that's a perfect way to end it. That was beautiful.
Yeah, man. Most definitely. And there was one other thing I was gonna say. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, it's definitely been fun speak. Oh, I know what it was. I just wanted to touch on this because Bobby was like, "Hey, have you heard the Reversalist?" And I was like, "No," and he was like, "Heavy." And this is like literally right before you came on. And I just listened to a snippet and was like, what? So what the Reversalist is?
Okay.
Is that a project that you're actually wanting to do shows, or you're just putting out music?
I don't know. As of right now, it was just I had an idea for 2 or 3 songs, and I wrote them. Actually, went and grabbed a microphone from a pawn shop, and went out and just here in my house, just track those vocals in like 1 or 2 takes for that album. And for those songs, there's 3 songs. There were 3 on Spotify, but now there's only 2. Spotify took one of them down. I don't know why, but they're on YouTube, the Reversalist, if anybody wants to look them up. And my idea for that was, with Death Therapy, I'm doing all this experimental stuff. What if I just wrote some just really nasty metalcore, And so that's what the Reversalist is. I'm hoping, when I say I've got a couple things that I'm working on, that's one of them. I'm hoping I can get an album for the Reversalist. I'm hoping that we can get, maybe get a real drummer that wants to play some shows rather than just track stuff. And it'd be fun, because it's literally just meant to be just fun, sing along, old school metalcore. So
Heck yeah, man.
Channel that 2006 vibe.
It's heavy. It's heavy. And if people want to donate to the Kickstarter for the children's book, where can they find that at?
If you just go to Kickstarter and search for Jason Wisdom,
awesome,
it'll be there. That's the easiest way, man. The algorithm doesn't like when I post links to stuff, so you know, we could talk for a whole nother hour about social media, but we won't do that. We won't do that.
Right.
Yeah, other than podcast, man, I completely left it. It was just too much for me. I was like,
I'm about there, man.
Heck yeah, man. Well, hey, it's definitely been a pleasure speaking with you, man. Thank you for coming on and giving us your time, and hopefully we'll be able to see you at a show sometime.
Yeah, for sure. That'd be awesome.
Man.
All right.
Let these people know what to do, Bobby.
Everybody, please stay black.
Don't be whack.